Having established that data has become really ubiquitous in society in general, I want to now focus on the role of data in modern organizations. I'm going to argue that data is key to developing and refining strategies, to implementing tactics, and to executing operations. But having said that, I also want to point out that many organizations are filled with people who are frustrated with their ability to use data to do these things. And based on my experience, it appears that a lot of that frustration stems from the fact that many people often start here. So somebody needs something and they go and ask the person who is in charge of the data for their organization or for their part of the organization. And that person goes and tries to get the information required, but it's often not quite the right information. So there can be multiple iterations of the data person looking for data and the person who wants to use the data getting frustrated that they're not getting quite what they want. In my view, in order for people to get what they want the first time when they're going to use their data to try to develop a strategy or to execute operations or to implement tactics, they need to start up here and think about what is their organization trying to do. When we think about any organization, it has strategies that it's trying to implement, it has tactics that it's trying to implement, it has certain operational things that it's trying to do. All of those things tend to give rise to particular decisions. They might be high-level strategic decisions about, should we continue doing this thing that we've been doing, or should we change that? Should we do things a really different way that we've been doing? Or it could be very operational. Should we make just a slight tweak in how we're doing something or other? But in each case, those general things that we're trying to do give rise to some key decisions that we need to make. Those decisions can often be broken down into specific questions that need to be answered. So if it's a company and it's looking at its strategic direction and trying to figure out if it should enter a new market or start developing a new product, those would be decisions that need to be made. And then each of those decisions could be broken down to the specific questions. So for example, if it's something like entering a new market, they might need to answer questions like, who are the key competitors, how many people are in that market, what is the average sale to people in that market, and so on. So we'd have a bunch of questions that needed to be answered. Once we know what those exact questions are, then it becomes easier to identify the specific information needed to answer each of those questions. So for example, if it is a question like, who are the competitors, we're not going to find that in our internal information. We're going to need to consult external sources. Where if a question is more around, did we have more customers in this location than that location last year, then we know that we need to go to our internal sources for that information. So once we have those specific information requirements figured out, that's the time to go and find the exact data source and apply the method and get the required information. But if we do it with all of this other context behind it, we're much more likely to go looking for and to extract the right information the first time around. One of the reasons I think that there's often this conflict between the person asking for something from the data and the person executing on that request is that often the questions are asked at this much more high level because the decision maker or the data user is thinking at a much broader level. But often when we think about data itself, it tends to be very specific. Many companies have databases or data sets where some things might be defined multiple ways. There's things that are very similar to one another. And if you are not very confident about the exact information that's needed, you might easily be misled and go get something that you thought was right the first time, but isn't exactly. So having all of this background helps prevent that. What a lot of organizations are really interested in too is kind of the unexpected insider PR benefit that might come out of data. There's some examples that people will hear of some organization having a big eureka moment as a result of analysis of big data or something like that. And in my view, if you've done all of this necessary groundwork, then when you go looking for the data, you're much more likely to get that unexpected insight or PR benefit too, because you're kind of looking in the right zone. For example, if you think about it, a metaphor is something like fishing. If you know exactly where the best fish are, then who knows, you might get something even better than you thought, but that the chances of that are much greater if you're kind of looking in the right general area to begin with.